You know that feeling, right? You're in this constant battle with yourself. You're telling yourself, okay, tomorrow I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to eat healthy. And then tomorrow comes and you're hitting snooze, skipping the gym, and reaching for a donut. It's a universal struggle. But what if I told you the problem isn't that you're weak or you lack willpower? What if it's all just a big misunderstanding of how our brains are actually wired? So, why is it so ridiculously hard to change? Well, it comes down to this. Our ability to make good, conscious, effortful choices, it's not unlimited. It's a finite resource. And every single decision you make all day long, I mean everything, from what to wear to which email to reply to first, it all takes a little chip out of your mental energy. There's actually a name for this. It's called decision fatigue. The best way to think about it is like your phone battery. You wake up in the morning with a full 100% charge, but every little decision you make drains that battery bit by bit. So by the end of the day, when you're trying to choose between going for that run you promised yourself or just melting into the couch, your battery's in the red. And your brain does what any good device does. It goes into low power mode and picks the easiest option. And this isn't just a theory. Get this. Researchers looked at judges and found they were way more likely to grant parole in the morning than in the afternoon. Why? Because their decision-making energy was just totally spent. Okay, so how do we deal with this? Well, you've probably heard of the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. He came up with this really fantastic practical framework. He says to build a habit, you need 4 things: an obvious cue, an attractive craving, an easy response, and a satisfying reward. It's a great system for engineering better routines into your life. But, and this is where it gets really interesting, to truly get why these frameworks work, and maybe more importantly, why they sometimes fail, we've got to dig deeper. We need to go beyond the how-to guides and look at the actual science. What is literally happening inside our brains when a behavior switches from being a conscious choice to something totally automatic? And to figure that out, we're going to look at lab rats. Yeah, seriously, a classic study with rats brilliantly shows us the fundamental difference between a deliberate action and a true automatic habit. This whole distinction was first figured out way back in 1985. So back in 1985, a psychologist named A. Dickinson laid out these 2 key ideas. First, you have an action. It's goal-directed. You do a thing because you know it gets you a reward you want. Simple enough. But then there's a habit. And a habit is a whole different animal. It's automatic, it's just a response to a trigger, and over time, and this is the wild part, it becomes completely disconnected from whether you even want the reward anymore. And here's the cool experiment that proved it. Scientists trained rats to press a lever for a food pellet. For the first group, the moderately trained ones, as soon as the scientists devalued the reward, basically they made the food taste bad, the rats pretty much stopped pressing the lever. It was an action they no longer wanted to take. But the overtrained rats? Whoa. Even after the food was made totally gross and undesirable, they just kept pressing the lever. The behavior had become a true habit, completely running on autopilot, totally detached from the outcome. So if just repeating something over and over can turn it into an automatic habit, that brings up a really big question, doesn't it? Does it matter how we feel while we're doing all that repetition? Does the motivation behind our self-control actually change how much energy it costs us? Well, according to researcher Mark Moravan, the answer is a huge, resounding yes. It turns out the reason you're using self-control might be the most important factor of all. It can dramatically change how much of that precious mental battery gets drained. Moravan's research basically splits our motivation into 2 camps. First, you have autonomous reasons. You can just think of this as the I want to. This is when you're choosing to do something because it lines up with your own values and interests. And then you have controlled reasons. That's the I have to. This is when you're forcing yourself to do something because of outside pressure, a deadline, a boss, or just trying to avoid punishment. And check out this experiment. It is just wild. They had 2 groups of people resist eating some really tempting cookies. The first group was asked nicely, in a way that supported their autonomy. The second group was pressured with controlling language like, you must not do this. Afterwards, they gave both groups a concentration task, and the results were absolutely staggering. The group that felt pressured made more than double the errors. Think about that. Just feeling forced drained their willpower battery twice as fast. So why does that happen? Well, Mershevin suggests it's connected to something he calls subjective vitality. It's that feeling of aliveness and energy you get when you're acting for reasons you truly believe in, that I want to feeling. It seems that this feeling of vitality might actually help recharge our willpower battery, which makes this kind of self-control way more efficient and sustainable than the kind that feels forced. Okay, so let's zoom out for a minute. When you put all this together, the fact that our habits can run on autopilot and that our willpower works better when we feel free, it leads us straight into one of the biggest,
oldest questions in all of philosophy. How much control do we actually have? Are we really in the driver's seat? So on one side of the argument, you have the determinist view. This idea basically says that choice is an illusion. Your brain, your personality, every input you've ever received, it all comes together and wholly determines what you do next. If you could rewind the universe to the exact same moment with the exact same conditions, you would inevitably make the exact same choice.
But then there's our own powerful lived experience. I mean, it sure feels like we have free will. As this counterargument puts it, when you're looking at a menu, you experience yourself weighing the options, thinking it over, and then making a choice. We live our entire lives as if we're the ones in charge, no matter what the physics might say. So, where does that leave us? We've seen that our behaviors can become so automatic that they run without our conscious say-so, just like those overtrained rats. We've also seen that our very ability to exert control is tied to our inner sense of freedom and motivation. Now, this science doesn't solve the free will debate, not by a long shot, but it adds a fascinating new layer, forcing us to ask, what does it even mean to be in control when so much of what we do is either automated or depends on how we feel inside? It's something to think about the next time you decide to hit that snooze button.